Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The Indian Defence Minister spoke about Sindh, the Sindh province. And on cue, Pakistan is having a meltdown. We will look at the latest flashpoint between India and Pakistan and what triggered it. Meanwhile, in South Africa, the G20 summit ends with 3 setbacks for Donald Trump, including the joint declaration that he wanted junked. In Japan, the more the Prime Minister riles up Beijing, the more her approval ratings shoot up. We will tell you why. Also, the great unraveling of DOGE, from a chainsaw to a vanishing act, the department meant to cut waste ended up shuttered. Why the world's wealthiest are quietly exiting the UK, how the Libyan oil race is heating up with the West back in the fray, what is India's new labour code, what does it mean for employees and employers. Meta is in the dock again for ignoring teen safety for years. The mystery of the disappearing rings. Is Saturn losing its signature crown? And a farewell to an icon. Dharmendra is no more. We look at his life and his legacy. The headlines first. Chinese President Xi Jinping holds a phone call with Donald Trump. The two leaders discuss Taiwan and bilateral cooperation. Xi tells Trump that the two countries should, quote-unquote, maintain momentum in ties and stressed on Taiwan's return to China. The call comes after the two leaders met in South Korea last month. The Indian Navy commissions INS Mahe. It's an indigenous anti-submarine warfare vessel. INS Mahe is a big boost to India's self-reliant push. The ship is designed to hunt submarines and conduct patrols. This introduces a new generation of shallow water combatants to the Indian fleet. A suicide bombing kills at least 3 Pakistani paramilitary personnel. The attack took place at a security headquarters in Peshawar. 2 other suspected attackers were shot dead. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. It's the latest violent incident in the province bordering Afghanistan. European leaders hail progress in talks to end the Ukraine war, but Germany says Russia must, quote-unquote, come to the table. Yesterday, American, European and Ukrainian officials met in Switzerland, where negotiators drafted an updated peace framework. An earlier US proposal was criticized for being pro-Russia. South Korea warns of the risk of accidental clashes with the North. Pyongyang has cut off all channels of communication with Seoul. The South Korean president has offered to hold talks with the North without preconditions. But Pyongyang is yet to respond to Seoul's overtures. And Belgium braces for chaos after being hit by a 3-day national strike. Several flights have been grounded and many trains cancelled. Tomorrow, schools, creches and hospitals will join the strike. This is to protest the government's proposed austerity measures which aim to shrink the national debt.
जहां तक जमीन की बात है तो बॉर्डर्स तो बदल सकते हैं, क्या पता कल को सिंध भारत में फिर से वापस।
It's India versus Pakistan again. This time, it's not a war of missiles or bullets. It's a war of words, claims, condemnations and threats. And at the center of it is India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. He touched a very raw and sensitive nerve in Pakistan. And that has triggered an outburst in Islamabad, a classic Pakistani meltdown. So what exactly did Rajnath Singh say? Yesterday, he attended an event for the Sindhi community in Delhi. Now, Sindhis are an ethnic group. They belong to the Sindh region in present-day Pakistan. During partition, this community got divided. More than 1 million Hindu Sindhis fled to India, while the Muslim Sindhis remained in Pakistan. It's a bloody and traumatic episode from 1947. We'll come to it later. But today, Sindh is a province of Pakistan, And Rajnath Singh tried to undercut Islamabad's control over it. He said borders can always change and that Sindh could return to India one day.
आज सिंध की भूमि, मेरे बहनों भाइयों, यह भारत का हिस्सा भले ही न हो, लेकिन सभ्यतागत रूप से सिंध हमेशा भारत का हिस्सा रहेगा। और जहां तक जमीन की बात है, तो बॉर्डर्स तो बदल सकते हैं, क्या पता कल को सिंध भारत में फिर से वापस आ जाए।
This has rattled Pakistan. They've hit back at Rajnath Singh's remarks. Let me quote from their statement. Pakistan strongly condemns the Indian Defence Minister's delusional and dangerously revisionist remarks regarding Pakistan's Sindh province. Such statements reveal an expansionist Hindutva mindset that seeks to challenge established realities. We urge Indian leaders to refrain from provocative rhetoric that threatens regional peace and stability. Look who's concerned about regional peace, the title sponsor of terrorism. Pakistan has long destabilized its neighbors, and I don't mean just India. If you ask the Afghans, they say the same thing. They'll tell you the same. So spare us the lectures on regional peace and stability. As for Sindh, why not look inward? Why not look at the province's complaints and struggles? Let me tell you what happened in April and May. Violent protests broke out in the Sindh province. The people were opposing a proposed canal project in the country. The canal sought to take water away from Sindh, so naturally the people protested. They blocked highways, they stopped trains, and they targeted ministers. This month has also seen multiple protests. First, over enforced disappearances, basically state-sponsored kidnappings. Then over unpaid salaries of teachers, and more recently over the constitutional amendment. We've spoken about this before. The 27th Amendment, Pakistan recently passed it. It significantly empowers their army chief Asim Munir. At the same time, this amendment also weakens the provinces like Sindh. So hundreds of protesters hit the streets in Sindh. They accused Islamabad of trying to steal their resources. If you join these dots, here's what you'll see. Sindh is restive. They have economic and political complaints, which is why Rajnath Singh's remarks hit too close to home. And unfortunately for Pakistan, some in Sindh are openly welcoming these remarks, like Sindhi leader Shafi Burfat. He leads a Sindhi separatist group in Pakistan, and he's all praise for the Indian Defence Minister. He says his group is willing to join the Indian Union. He may not represent the Sindhi mainstream, he may not even speak for a lot of people there, but his comments show that Sindh has complaints. And those complaints stem from systemic issues. Let's look at history. In colonial times, Sindh was part of the Bombay Presidency. You had Sindh, Gujarat and Maharashtra. They were all bunched together. In the 1920s, there was a push to separate Sindh. Both Hindus and Muslims backed this campaign. And in 1935, they succeeded. So Sindh became a province with its own legislative assembly. This assembly supported the creation of Pakistan. In 1947, they voted to join the new country Pakistan. But unlike Punjab and Bengal, Sindh was not partitioned. The whole of Sindh was given to Pakistan. However, the people feel alienated. Because as a country, Pakistan is dominated by Punjab. You look at their army, you look at their politicians, you look at their businesses, they're all controlled by the Punjabis. And this has led to mounting resentment. Today, Sindhis make up just 2% of the armed forces in Pakistan. They make up just 5% of the civil servants, but they make up more than 14% of the total population. It's the same story in other provinces too. Balochistan was made up of 4 princely states. In 1947, one of them chose to be independent. At first, Islamabad accepted this arrangement, but in 1948, they sent soldiers to Balochistan. The province had no option but to join Pakistan. Today, Balochistan makes up 44% of Pakistan's land area, 44%. It has natural resources worth billions of dollars, yet it is the poorest province in Pakistan. Do you see the trend here? Pakistan is a country for Punjabis. Everyone else is treated as a second-class citizen. Compare this to India. We too had to integrate provinces and kingdoms. In 1947, 48% of India's land was not part of the Union. 48% of the land. It came after integration. Successive Indian governments tried to further national unity, and it continues under the current government. Look at the projects in Kashmir. Look at the connectivity plans in the Northeast. It's a relentless push to improve our unity and integrity. Pakistan never bothered to do any of that. It's easy to complain and condemn on social media. It is harder to build a united, growing nation. That's what Pakistan should learn from this episode.
Summit is therefore closed.
What does Donald Trump pride himself on the most? Getting a deal with his name on it. From agreements to declarations to peace plans, he wants to be the one who breaks deadlocks. He wants to be the leader who shapes global outcomes. And that was his plan for the G20 summit too. Trump tried to take control from the outside. The summit was held in South Africa. Trump skipped it. He did not attend the summit. He tried to pressure other members, and he tried to turn the entire event into political theatre. Only this time, it did not work. The G20 moved forward without Trump in the room, and it handed Donald Trump 3 big setbacks. The first one was a joint declaration. Trump opposed it from the word go. From the moment he refused to attend the summit, he was against the joint declaration. He even tried using his allies to get his point across. But South Africa navigated the situation quite well. Since they were the host country, their president chaired this summit. That's President Cyril Ramaphosa. He opened the summit by adopting the declaration. It was a 2-day event. Usually, the declaration is adopted at the end of the summit, not at the beginning. But South Africa flipped the script. President Ramaphosa said the text had unanimous support. This was despite America's opposition and Argentina's objections. Argentina's president is Javier Milei. He's very close to Donald Trump. He too skipped the summit. He sent his foreign minister instead. And this Argentinian minister tried to do his best to block the joint declaration, but eventually it went through.
Adoption of the declaration from the summit sends an important signal to the world that multilateralism can and does deliver. It sends a message of hope and solidarity across the world.
To add insult to injury, the declaration had everything that Trump did not want. It mentioned energy transition, climate change, and gender equality, and it was adopted without inputs from the White House. A White House official later called this move, quote-unquote, shameful, but South Africa stood its ground. It was a quiet but firm rebuke to the Trump administration and their pressure tactics. And this was the first clear setback to Trump. The second one came on the sidelines of the G20 summit. 3 major powers from the global south came together. That's India, Brazil, and South Africa. Their leaders met in Johannesburg, and they revived an old trilateral grouping. It's called IBSA, the India, Brazil, South Africa Dialogue Forum, IBSA, India, Brazil, South Africa. And this was no routine photo op. It was the first high-level IBSA meeting in more than a decade. And it happened thanks to Trump's aggressive trade policies. The tariff war, it has pushed these countries together. They're coordinating a joint response. They're building an alternative platform for cooperation, and the absence of China has helped. You see, just like Donald Trump, Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, also did not attend the G20 summit. And this gave the IBSA leaders a chance to get together, to accelerate their own agenda and to promote multilateralism.
President Trump has been demonstrating this for several months now. He has already withdrawn from UNESCO and the World Trade Organization. He is attempting to preach the end of multilateralism in practice, trying to strengthen unilateralism. I believe multilateralism will prevail.
This smaller format gives them speed. The 3-member countries can coordinate faster and take decisions quickly. Remember, these countries are part of the BRICS too. India, South Africa, Brazil, they're all original members of the BRICS as well. But with a smaller group like IBSA, they get more flexibility. And this also shows how alliances are shifting, how countries are pushing back against Trump's pressure tactics. So that's the second setback for the US president. The third one was not just a diplomatic defeat, it bordered on humiliation for the United States. As the summit closed, President Ramaphosa banged the gavel to mark its end.
Now say that this gavel of this G20 summit formally closes this summit and now moves on to the next president of the G20, which is the United States, where we shall see each other again next year. The summit is therefore closed.
Before closing the summit, he rejected a request from the United States. Next year, this summit will be hosted by the US. And as per tradition, before closing the summit, the host hands over the gavel to the next president. It's a symbolic way to hand over the G20 presidency. Had Donald Trump attended this one, he would have stood next to Ramaphosa for the handover. But since Trump did not come, Washington suggested an alternative. They wanted a junior American diplomat to accept the gavel. South Africa rejected the request. They said they won't let Trump's absence downgrade the moment. They told the Americans, if you want the handover, come to South Africa's foreign ministry. And that made quite a statement. It summed up how this summit played out. Trump pushed for unilateralism, the G20 responded with unity. He tried to bully the process, the G20 responded with resolve, and most importantly, they showed how they can get the job done without the United States. There was a joint declaration, despite Trump's best efforts to block it. Of course, it wasn't easy. Ramaphosa was later heard telling Prime Minister Modi how hard it got towards the end.
Thank you for the support that India has given South Africa in hosting the G20. You should have told us that it is such a difficult task. Maybe we would have run away. we learned a lot from your hosting of the G20, and yours was spectacular and very big. Ours was just really just so small.
Prime Minister Modi had a productive summit too. Despite Trump's distractions, India's message found resonance in the final declaration. Prime Minister Modi spoke about AI. He warned against its misuse. He said technology must stay human-centric and not driven by money. He backed the transition to clean energy. He called for better satellite data. He also encouraged the G20 to join hands to work on critical minerals and to defeat the menace of drugs and terror. The Indian Prime Minister's message was in sync with the room. The G20 may be a diverse group. Its agenda may not be binding on its members, but this year they spoke with clarity and they backed a shared vision. Now it is Donald Trump's turn. He is hosting the summit next year at his own resort in Miami. The challenge for the United States is quite clear. Trump is in no position to dictate the agenda. That playbook did not work this time. He'll probably try again next year, but the G20 has clearly moved on. They want dialogue, not diktats. Consensus is often the absence of leadership. Famous words of Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of the UK, and now gospel for Sanae Takaichi, the current Prime Minister of Japan. She's just weeks into her premiership and she started with a bang. Forget consensus, Takaichi is locked in a full-blown confrontation with China. It may be hurting her country's economy, but it's helping her political career. Look at the G20 summit. Leaders from across the globe were in South Africa. Sanae Takaichi was there too. So was Chinese Premier Li Qiang. Apparently, Takaichi was hoping for some sort of engagement. Reports suggest that she took extra care with her wardrobe. to project that she had an upper hand in the negotiation. But that negotiation never happened.
I did not have the opportunity to communicate with Chinese Premier Li Qiang at this G20. Japan's policy of comprehensively advancing a strategic and mutually beneficial relationship with China and building a constructive and stable relationship has been consistent since I became Prime Minister.
What followed was a frosty photo shoot. Takaichi and Li Qiang were both present, but they maintained their distance. Once the photo shoot was over, Takaichi was asked about it. She said that Tokyo was open to dialogue.
Since there are issues and challenges between Japan and China, I believe we should reduce them and increase understanding and cooperation. Japan remains open to various forms of dialogue with China. We have not closed any doors. It is important that within this context, Japan insists its positions where necessary. We will continue to respond appropriately based on this stance.
So Takaichi is trying to cool the rhetoric, but Beijing is not having any of it. Look at Wang Yi's statements. He is the foreign minister of China and he says Japan has crossed some red lines. Beijing has now taken this spat to the United Nations. They're accusing Tokyo of threatening a quote-unquote armed intervention. So things are clearly getting serious. Now we've been tracking this standoff on our show here on Vantage. The whole thing, as we've told you, started with one statement. Prime Minister Takaichi was asked a simple question. What would Japan do if China attacked Taiwan? She implied that Japan may respond militarily. That was her statement. And it led to all hell breaking loose. Because until now, Japan had been ambiguous. Their leaders never said anything explicitly about Taiwan. There was just an implication that Japan may act if forced to. But nothing had ever been spelt out. Not by a prime minister, definitely. Until, of course, Takaichi's comments. Of course, Beijing reacted with fury. It told Chinese citizens to not travel to Japan. It reimposed a ban on Japanese seafood. It delayed the release of Japanese films and concerts. And it heated up nationalistic rhetoric online. It's classic Chinese playbook. But you see, in politics, sometimes your opponent is your best campaign manager. In Takaichi's case, that's certainly happening. Every time she takes a sharper line on China, her approval ratings tick upward. Let me show you a poll which was conducted just days after her comments. Her approval ratings were up by 6 points. Nearly half of the Japanese public endorsed her idea. They said Japan should be able to defend itself if the Taiwan Strait erupts. And part of this is timing. Japan has been reassessing its security posture for years. Its defense budgets have grown. Also look at the distance between Japan and Taiwan. From Japan's westernmost islands, Taiwan is barely 110 kilometers. So the Japanese public is wary. Basically, Takaichi is speaking into a microphone that is on. That's one part. The other part is her politics. Takaichi leads Japan's ruling party, the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party. It's a right-wing party. And even within this party, she is part of the more conservative wing. Her camp has been constrained by Japan's post-war constitution, a pacifist constitution that did not allow Japan to go to war. But she has taken a hardline position. She believes that Japan must speak plainly about Taiwan, not for Taiwan's sake, but for Japan's own security. Because Taiwan is just across the water. A crisis there would not remain a distant fire, it would send embers into Japan's backyard. And Takaichi is betting that clarity today will deter aggression tomorrow. Is that a reckless approach? Well, the answer depends on who you ask. Is this position hurting Japan? Not very much, not yet. China's economic response has been targeted but limited. But the real test would come if China escalates with restrictions on rare earth exports or more aggressive naval maneuvers. It's not happened yet. For now, China has only been posturing. But they're also learning the hard way that their pressure campaign is strengthening the leader they had hoped to subdue.
Government efficiency. DOGE. This is
the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
It's a very important decision, not a great recommendation.
Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, DOGE. When Donald Trump took office, it was the talk of the town. DOGE had billionaire Elon Musk, it had the mandate, it had the chainsaw.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw!
Pretty dramatic even for Trump and company. DOGE came with a grand promise. They will cut government waste and save $2 trillion for America. 8 months later, DOGE is history. The department is being disbanded. It was supposed to run until 2026. It barely survived a few months, and it makes for an excellent case study on performative governance. So what explains the rise and fall of DOGE? As Trump took office for a second term, DOGE was unveiled as some sort of high-tech project, sort of like Silicon Valley meets bureaucracy. Elon Musk was the poster boy, and its mission was quite simple: cut waste, fire people, save money, and remake the US government more efficiently. DOGE agents stormed government departments unannounced. Some even refused to identify themselves. Budgets were slashed overnight. Musk insisted it was the most transparent organization ever, which was funny because nobody could actually see what they were doing.
To further combat inflation, we will not only be reducing the cost of energy, but will be ending the flagrant waste of taxpayer dollars. And to that end, I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it, perhaps. Which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight.
In the first few months, DOGE's impact was impossible to ignore. Over 200,000 federal workers were laid off, and another 75,000 took buyouts. Entire departments were reshuffled, long-standing programs vanished overnight, and the DOGE staff, well, they lived in their headquarters. And I mean literally. Reports say they had clothes, bedding, and makeshift dorms. Elon Musk himself was camping close to the Oval Office. All seemed to be going good for them, but then came the feud. If DOGE had a villain origin story, this was it. The Trump-Musk bromance fell apart. They broke up publicly. There were online jabs, there were leaks, even some snarky one-liners. The whole of Washington had a front seat to this drama, and by June, Elon Musk had fully stepped away from DOGE. He has since left Washington, D.C.
This is not the end of DOGE, but really the beginning. My time as a special government employee necessarily had to end. It was a limited time thing. It's 134 days, I believe, which ends in a few days.
He left behind a fractured department, a leadership vacuum, and two factions of DOGE loyalists. The White House finally intervened. They booted out the remaining Musk loyalists. DOGE became a silent spectator, and now it has finally been shuttered. The Office of Personnel Management was asked about it. The director said DOGE no longer exists. What happened to its employees? Well, they have moved on. They're working with other departments, which brings us to the big question. What was the point of all of this? What was the point of DOGE? It claimed to have saved, and I'm quoting, tens of billions of dollars, but experts could not verify a single dollar they saved. After all, the department did not present any public records. And forget saving money, government spending has gone up in the past few months. As for federal efficiency, ask the departments that were gutted by DOGE. They are now struggling to rebuild their teams. So it just created a lot of chaos and then delivered nothing. This was a department that was sold as a revolution. It fizzled out in mere months. And here we are after months of headlines, hysteria, firings, fights, and a billion memes. DOGE ends very differently from the way it began. A loud promise, but a quiet exit. There were no grand reforms, no giant savings, no government revolution, just a department that kicked up more dust than it ever cleared. And in the end, DOGE did not cut government waste, it became government waste. You could say the only thing it delivered was a lesson for all leaders. Governance is not a stage show. Efficiency is not created by shock and awe. It has to be built with systems and discipline. To the UK now, which is making news for the wrong reasons yet again. One of Britain's richest men is moving out. Steel magnate Lakshmi Mittal. Reports say he's leaving the UK. He's now a resident of Switzerland, and going forward, he'll be spending more time in Dubai. This is what reports say. And why is he leaving? For tax purposes. Apparently, the ultra-rich do not feel at home in the United Kingdom. And the reason is rising taxes on capital gains and inheritance. Lakshmi Mittal's exit comes amid an exodus, the biggest of its kind. Billionaires and millionaires are leaving the United Kingdom. More than 60,000 of them are expected to leave this year. Our next report has more.
The UK used to be a playground for the rich. Tax breaks, luxury real estate, global finance. But that's changing fast. The rich are leaving, and they're not looking back. The latest to walk away is Lakshmi Mittal. The Indian-born steel tycoon is worth almost $20 billion. For years, he's been one of Britain's richest men, a fixture on the UK rich list. But now he's moving out. A report in the Sunday Times says Mittal is a resident of Switzerland for tax purposes, and he has a mansion in Dubai. The reason? Taxes. The Labour government is planning a major shake-up. It's targeted at the ultra-wealthy. Capital gains tax has already gone up. Tax relief for entrepreneurs has been cut, and new inheritance rules are now in place. But more changes are coming. Reports say the next budget could introduce an exit tax, a 20% levy on wealth taken out of the UK. It's still just a proposal, but it's spooking the rich, and the numbers back it. Britain is seeing its biggest billionaire drop in history. The 2025 Sunday Times Rich List shows a clear trend. The total number of billionaires in the UK has fallen, from 165 last year to 156 now. That's the sharpest decline in 37 years, and the third year in a row that the numbers have dropped. The main reason? Labour's crackdown on the non-dom tax status. It allowed wealthy residents to avoid taxes on overseas income. Now it's being dismantled. The exodus isn't limited to billionaires. Millionaires are leaving too. A record 142,000 are expected to relocate globally this year. The UK alone will lose around 16,500 of them. That's more than any other country, twice as many as China, 10 times more than Russia. According to the Henley Private Wealth Migration Report, this is no temporary shift. It's a trend, a long-term move away from the UK. So where are they going? Dubai, Monaco, Malta. Places with no income tax, no capital gains tax, and fewer rules on inheritance. It's a financial pull and a political push. After a decade of sluggish growth and sweeping reforms by both Conservative and Labour governments, the wealthy are voting with their feet. Lakshmi Mittal's departure is symbolic. He's not just a businessman, he's part of the old image of Britain, a country that welcomed capital and kept policy predictable. That image is fading. And the UK's new challenge is how to hold on to wealth while trying to tax it. The era of quiet privilege is ending, and Britain's billionaires could be on the move.
Here's a story that sounds like the 1990s, a Middle Eastern country ravaged by war. a proxy battle between the West and Russia, and a new hunt for oil. Well, this is Libya in 2025. It's a country located in northern Africa. It's also a country divided into two camps. Western Libya is ruled by the UN-recognized government. Eastern Libya is ruled by a rebel commander. Since 2020, a fragile ceasefire has kept them apart. It is in this backdrop that an oil race is now unfolding. This week, a team from Tripoli visited the United States. They represent the UN-recognized Libyan regime, and their goal? To bring oil firms back to Libya. That's what they're trying to do. The regime is all set to auction oil licenses in 2026. That'll be the first time in 18 years that they're doing this, auctioning oil licenses. So naturally, there is a lot of expectation and curiosity. All the big oil firms are raring to go. Your Shell, Chevron, Total Energies, Eni, Repsol, all of them will take part. They're keen to see what Libya has to offer. The Tripoli regime is playing the long game here. They know that oil demand is rising. They know that Russian oil is getting sanctioned, so the market is ripe for a new player. Enter Libya. Right now, they produce 1.4 million barrels of oil per day. The target is to reach 2 million by 2030, and that's where Libya needs Western oil firms, because they have the money and the technology to help Libya. But that's the business side of it. What about the politics? Remember the rebel commander I told you about? His name is Khalifa Haftar, and Russia has long supported him. So this oil race is equal parts business and politics. The West gets two main things: fresh oil reserves and a check on Russian influence. And the Tripoli regime? Well, they get investments and an ally against Khalifa Haftar. It's a win-win for both sides. Of course, all of this is on paper. There are several steps before that. The first being the auction. Libya is putting 22 oil blocks for this auction. 11 of them are offshore. The remaining 11 are onshore. Put together, these blocks contain 1.63 billion barrels of oil and gas. Those are proven and discovered reserves. And there's potential for 18 billion more. The bidding will start in February next year. After that, the extraction will begin. Needless to say, security will be a key issue. Khalifa Haftar and his sons control key oil assets in Libya. They also have access to Russian military and technology, so expect them to fight back. Now we understand what the Tripoli regime is doing here. They're leveraging what they have because the people need help. Let me share some numbers with you. More than 32% of Libyans live in poverty. Around 435,000 people have been displaced. More than 2.4 million people need some form of assistance. Almost half of them are women and children. We don't speak about Libya often, but the fact is this is a humanitarian crisis, a major humanitarian crisis. So yes, it is tempting for the Tripoli regime to woo oil giants, to leverage their resources to help their people. But you can't deny the irony here. Western countries bombed Libya in 2011. They helped topple Libya's longtime ruler Muammar Gaddafi. So the West is responsible for the chaos that you see today. Now those same Western countries are coming back. Their companies will plunder Libya's oil. They will make huge profits. Meanwhile, Libyans will await their trickle, whatever is left after corruption and commissions. Do you see the irony here? Gaddafi was a brutal dictator. He stamped out free speech and dissent, but he also ran a welfare state. Libya used to be the richest country in Africa. They had the highest per capita GDP and life expectancy, but today it is a failed state, all thanks to Western nation building. Because the West thought they could decide who will rule Libya. As this new oil race heats up, we can only hope that there isn't a repeat. Yes, money and technology will pour in, but we hope it reaches the people of Libya, not just Western oil giants and their agents. Let's turn to India now, where employees have a new favorite topic, the new labor codes. A lot of people are curious about the new rules. There's a lot of confusion around them. What do the new codes mean for employees and what does it change for companies? Tonight, we'll break it down for you. India used to have 29 central laws on labor. 29. Too many and too confusing. In the year 2020, the government tried to streamline this. They introduced and passed 4 labor codes. Last week, these new codes came into effect. And tonight, we'll bring you the top highlights. Number 1, tweaks to your take-home salary. The new code says your basic pay must make up 50% of your package. If your package is 10 lakh rupees, then the basic pay should be 5 lakhs. This will reduce your in-hand salary every month, but it will boost payments to social security schemes like a provident fund. That's point number 1. Number 2, a guaranteed minimum wage. And this will apply to all workers in India, organized, unorganized, it doesn't matter. If you work in India, you will be guaranteed a minimum wage. In 2019, a committee recommended 375 rupees a day, which is around $5.3. Back then, it was $5.3 per day. Chances are it will be calculated once again. Number 3, timely payments are mandated. A daily worker must be paid at the end of their shift, a weekly worker before their weekly holiday, a monthly worker within 7 days of the next month begins. Within 7 days of the next month, they should get their pay. Number 4, working hours have been set. You can work between 8 and 12 hours a day. The weekly limit is 48 hours. 48 hours in a week, that's how long you should work. And if you work extra, then you must be paid twice the regular wage. And this clarification comes at a very important time. You have industry veterans asking people to work 14 hours a day, but the labor code says 8 to 12 is fine. Number 4, protection for gig workers. This includes delivery boys and cab riders. They will now be included in the Social Security umbrella. We are talking about life insurance, disability cover, and health benefits. Say you're an Uber or a Swiggy, then 1 to 2% of your turnover will go to the Social Security fund. Number 6, push for gender parity. The new codes reiterate equal pay for equal work. They also permit night shifts for women. Until now, women could not do night shifts in factories or mines, but that has now been changed. If there is consent and security, night shifts are allowed for women now. Number 7, free annual health checkup. This applies to all workers above 40 years of age. Your employee owes you 1 free health checkup a year. And finally, number 8, benefits for fixed-term employees. This is a new class of workers created by the government. Such workers are employed for a fixed term, say 1 or 2 years. While regular employees have no such timeline, these fixed-term workers will be eligible for gratuity in 1 year. But for regular employees, it's still 5 years. And that sums up the key changes to our labor laws. As expected, there are differences, there are also questions, but here's one thing that everyone agrees on. We had to update our labor laws. It's something that benefits all sides. Workers get protection and social security benefits. Employers get ease of hiring. A lot of companies have complained about India's labor laws. Too many laws hamper efficiency. It becomes hard for them to keep track of these laws and to comply with all of them, so companies may simply shift elsewhere. At the same time, you need to strike a balance. The goal is to keep companies and workers happy. Let's see if these new codes can achieve that. How do you measure a life in cinema? In films, in awards, or in the way millions of people feel when they hear a name? Today, that name is Dharmendra. He was one of India's biggest film stars. For more than 60 years, he defined what a Bollywood hero looked like. Just saying his name brings back memories of Sunday afternoons watching his iconic films, of dialogues people still repeat, and of a man who made heroism feel warm, human, and real. He was called the He-Man of Bollywood. But what made him unforgettable was not just his strength, it was his heart, his simplicity. Today, at the age of 89, Dharmendra has passed away, and Indian cinema will never quite feel the same. At Firstpost, we offer our deepest condolences to his family and to the millions who grew up loving him.
Indian cinema has lost one of its brightest lights. A man who shaped the childhoods of millions. A man whose smile, voice, and presence defined what a hero felt like for more than 60 years. Dharmendra passed away in Mumbai today at the age of 89. He spent his final days at home, surrounded by family, after weeks of fragile health. For many people, the news has felt like losing someone from their childhood. Because Dharmendra was never just a star on a poster. He was a presence welcomed into homes and into memories. His journey began in 1935 in Punjab's Ludhiana district. He was raised in a humble Jat Sikh household where his father was a school teacher. Life was modest, but his imagination was large. He watched his first film as a teenager and felt an instant pull towards that world. That feeling carried him to a national Filmfare talent contest, which he won. It brought him to Mumbai, then called Bombay, with little more than hope and courage. And it slowly turned a young man from a small village into one of Indian cinema's most loved heroes. His early films helped him and his footing. Then Phool Aur Patthar revealed a leading man who could be intense and gentle in the same moment. From there his career took off. Yadon Ki Baarat, Mera Gaon Mera Desh, Sita Aur Geeta, Dream Girl, Sholay. One performance after another carried the ease and warmth that audiences loved. Many of his dialogues became part of everyday conversation. People still repeat them because he delivered them with honesty and heart. Across genres, he remained effortless. Humor in family dramas, sincerity in action, and tenderness in romance. Audiences connected with him instantly. Beyond the silver screen, his personal life also captivated the nation. And over time, his family became one of Hindi cinema's most recognizable families. There was also a brief period in public service. He served as Member of Parliament from Bikaner between 2004 and 2009. But he eventually returned to the world that felt closest to him. In his later years, every appearance carried a sense of nostalgia. Each film reminded audiences of the screen legend they had grown up admiring. In a way, his story continues beyond today. His final performance in 21 will be released this December. It is the last glimpse of a man who gave 6 decades of his life to the craft he loved. Dharmendra was honoured with the Padma Bhushan in 2012. He also achieved the Filmfare Lifetime Achievement Award. But he often said that the affection of ordinary people mattered more than any accolade. Within minutes of the news breaking, that affection poured forth. President Draupadi Murmu said his legacy will inspire generations. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said his passing marks the end of an era. Actors from every decade shared memories of kindness, warmth, and generosity. Dharmendra's journey was never only about fame. It was about a boy who dreamt big, a man who stayed grounded, and an artist whose warmth made millions feel like family.
For our next story, let's go back to 2019. It's when Meta launched Project Mercury. And what's that? It was a way to measure how Facebook and Instagram affects its users, especially their emotional well-being. How do these platforms affect the emotional well-being of their users? The company even hired Nielsen to track how people felt when they stepped away from these apps. Were they happier or not? And here's what the results found. Users who quit Facebook for a week felt less anxious. They felt less lonely. They compared themselves less to others. Their daily dread dipped. Now, this sort of result should have sparked a bigger study, maybe even a public announcement or at least a warning label for users. Of course, it led to a sprawling lawsuit. But what did Meta do? It quietly shut down this project. So then why are we talking about it tonight? Why are we talking about Project Mercury after 6 years? It's because of newly unsealed court findings. They reveal more things about the project. And the more you learn, the starker it gets. In fact, one employee summed it up best. They said, if it leaks, we will look like tobacco companies. Meta, of course, says the research was flawed, but the questions still remain. If the study showed nothing of concern, why did they bury it? And it's not the only problem. It's the first of the many sins. Because look at what else the court filings have revealed. A year after Project Mercury's internal alarm bells, lawmakers asked Meta a very simple question. Does Instagram harm teen girls? Meta's official answer was no. But according to the filings, the company already had data on this. Data that showed that teens using Meta had a lot of problems. Those who used Meta heavily showed a lot of problems, like spikes in anxiety, depression, loneliness, body image issues. And the argument was simple. Meta knew more than it admitted. It misled the US Congress. Now we know every tech company misses harmful content. But what shocked even Meta's former employees was the alleged 17-strike rule. What's that? What's the 17-strike rule? You see, any account on Meta can be reported 16 times for potential sex trafficking activity, 16 times. If it crosses 17, it will be taken down. Now, internally, the staff called it a very, very high threshold. After all, we're talking about sex trafficking here. Of course, Meta disputes this fiercely. It claims that it removes such accounts instantly. And it doesn't stop there. Usually, every parent has the same nightmare, a stranger messaging their kid on Instagram at midnight. That's the biggest fear. In 2019, Meta researchers recommended a solution that could have prevented that. It would have made teen accounts private by default. Quite simple and obvious. But the growth team, the Meta growth team, ran the numbers, and that made them panic. If they implemented this plan for the safety of teenagers, it would affect 1.5 million monthly active teens. It would be a blow to their traffic. So guess what did Meta do? Well, absolutely nothing. For 4 years, they did nothing about this. And what happened during this time? Teens experienced billions of unwanted interactions. You may have seen Instagram's accounts you may follow feature. It recommended 1.4 million inappropriate adults to minors in a single day, 1.4 million. Internal teams begged for the change. Young users kept getting exposed. Eventually, in 2024, Meta rolled out teen accounts, but by then, the damage had been done for a lot of users. And if you thought all of this was bad, here's the worst one. Internal researchers had raised concerns for Meta that there was rising self-harm content, eating disorder clusters, depressive spirals, infinite scroll was addictive. Notifications at night caused sleep deprivation. All of this was affecting the mental health of users, especially teenagers. The company even came up with fixes. But what did the executives do? They either repeatedly killed or delayed those measures. Why? Because more usage meant more time on the platform. More time on the platform meant more growth. For Meta, growth was everything. They obviously reject this characterization, but the internal emails tell a very different story. So what happens next? Meta already faces multiple lawsuits. A hearing will decide if all these documents become public. But let's be honest, what will that really change? Because we are stuck in this strange loop. There is a tech scandal. We have public outrage. The tech company apologizes. First they deny, then they apologize. Then they introduce new features. There's silence for some time until another scandal hits us. Because the world has been running on a kind of borrowed faith that Silicon Valley will fix its own messes, that innovation offsets harm, that a notification is harmless, that a teenager can handle the algorithm alone. But Project Mercury shows what happens behind the curtain. And maybe this lawsuit is the moment the curtain finally stays open. Until then, we are stuck with a truth too big to ignore. These are platforms that are shaping an entire generation. They've already caused more harm than good, and the question now is not what they knew. It's whether we are finally ready to do something about it. One year ago, we told you that this would happen in 2025. We told you about a moment when Saturn would appear to lose its rings, when the most recognizable planet in the skies would look almost bare. Well, that moment has now arrived. Sky watchers around the world looked up on Sunday and they saw Saturn without its famous crown. No rings, no bright arcs, just a smooth, round planet in the night sky. It looked dramatic and strange. But it was not a cosmic crisis. It was a rare alignment, a natural trick of angle and light. And it happens only once in more than a decade. So why did Saturn's rings seem to vanish? What caused the illusion? And what does it tell us about the way our planets move? Here's a report.
Imagine this. You point your telescope at Saturn. You expect to see its bright, stunning rings. Instead, the planet looks almost bare. It feels like Saturn has lost its crown. That is exactly what happened on the night of the 23rd of November. Around the world, sky watchers saw Saturn with its rings apparently gone. But nothing has actually happened to the planet. Saturn's rings have not disappeared. They have not been destroyed. What you saw was an optical illusion. And it comes from a special kind of alignment in space. Astronomers have a name for this. They call it a ring plane crossing. To understand that, we need to know Saturn's position in space. Saturn does not sit straight up. It is tilted. Its axis leans by about 26.7 degrees. Earth is tilted too, by about 23.5 degrees. Because of this tilt, both planets behave in a special way as they orbit the Sun. Earth takes 1 year to go around the Sun once. Saturn takes about 29.4 Earth years to complete one orbit. The planet's rings are tilted at the same angle as the planet. So, as Saturn moves along its long path, the angle of the rings changes from our point of view on Earth. Sometimes we see the rings wide open. Sometimes they look slimmer. And sometimes, like now, they almost vanish. Here's the science behind it. Saturn's rings are extremely wide, but extremely thin. They stretch more than 280,000 kilometers across, but in many places, they are only tens of meters thick. This moment is rare. It happens only once every 13 to 15 years. That is when the rings line up perfectly with Earth. And last Sunday evening, that alignment took place in our skies. A similar crossing happened in March this year, but Saturn was hidden in the sun's glare. Almost no one saw it. This time, the alignment took place in the evening sky. Saturn was shining in the constellation Pisces. It looked like a bright point of light in the southeastern sky after sunset. Through a small telescope, the planet looked round and smooth. The rings had collapsed into a razor-thin line. In some telescopes, they disappeared entirely. Larger telescopes still picked up tiny clues, a faint streak, a thin shadow across Saturn's surface, and some of its moons. Astronomers used this moment for science. When the main rings turn edge-on, their glare becomes weaker. That makes it easier to study the faint outer rings, and it helps scientists observe the dim structures around Saturn that normally get washed out. But for most people, this event shows how the solar system keeps changing from our point of view. The planets tilt, they move, their angles shift, and what we see from Earth changes with them. There is also a slow story playing out in the background. Saturn's rings will not last forever. NASA confirmed in 2018 that the rings are slowly fading. Tiny particles fall into the planet in a process called ring rain. But this happens over millions of years. Nothing dramatic is happening right now. What we saw on Sunday was temporary, a neat trick of geometry. The rings will open up again over the next few years. They will look wider by the late 2020s, and they will return to full glory in the early 2030s. For now, this was a brief moment, and a reminder that even familiar planets can surprise us.
Our joke of the day is actually the joke of the weekend. It all began on Friday. New York's mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani visited the White House. The world was bracing for a tense meeting, maybe some shouting or some snide remarks. Instead, we got a love fest. Trump said that Mamdani would make a great mayor for New York. This is the same man he called a communist and a total nutcase. All that animosity was forgotten on Friday. The next day, on Saturday, Trump also updated his look. The white shirt and tie was out. Trump was seen sporting a new neckwear, and on cue, the internet exploded. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. An astronaut captures stunning views of the Northern Lights from the International Space Station. Myanmar's military destroys buildings used as online scam centers as it continues its crackdown. And winter swimmers brave 30 degrees Celsius in Russia. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1859, Charles Darwin published his book on the origin of species. The book talked about the theory of natural selection. It changed the way mankind viewed evolution. The book became one of the most influential books of modern times. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
They promised glory. They delivered fear. They shaped nations. They scarred generations. From brutal purges to propaganda machines, from stolen power to violent falls from the throne. Welcome to The Dictator, a series that strips away the myth and then exposes the men behind the tyranny. History remembers their power, Firstpost reveals their truth.